The millionaire comes home early and the cleaner whispers, "Shut up." The reason paralyzes him. Michael Patterson never came home before 8 in the evening. That October Thursday, something different happened. The client cancelled the meeting at the last minute, and he decided to return to the mansion in Beverly Hills at 3 in the afternoon. With the red roses he had bought to decorate the office, he climbed the steps of the main entrance, thinking about how he would use those extra hours of work at home. Upon opening the door, he expected to find Dorothy finishing the cleaning upstairs. Instead, he encountered a scene he would never forget. The 52-year-old woman was in the middle of the room, with her index finger pressed firmly against her lips, her eyes wide with panic. "Shut up," she murmured, almost without sound, while her hands trembled visibly. Michael stopped in the middle of the room, still holding the roses. His heart raced when he realized Dorothy wasn't speaking to him. She was looking toward the back of the house, where the guest rooms that no one had used for years were located. A muffled noise came from there, slow, dragging footsteps, like those of someone very elderly. "Mrs. Dorothy, what's going on here?" he whispered, approaching slowly. The housekeeper took a step back, her face pale as paper. She had worked for the Patterson family for over 15 years, since before Michael's marriage. He had never seen her in such a state of nervousness. "Mr. Michael, you came home too early," she said, her voice trembling. I didn't know how to tell you." Her hands continued to shake as she tried to explain something that seemed impossible to explain. The noise from the back of the house grew louder. A faint but unmistakable voice was calling for someone. Michael felt the world spin as he recognized that voice. It was impossible. It couldn't be true. His father had been admitted to St. Andrew's Medical Center 6 months ago, receiving the best treatment for the early onset of dementia that had been manifesting since the loss of his mother 2 years prior. "Dorothy, tell me right now who is in the back of the house," he ordered, trying to keep his voice low but firm. The housekeeper lowered her eyes, like a child caught doing something wrong. "It's Mr. Henry, sir. Your father has been here for 3 days." The words came out like a confession she had been holding for a long time. "I found him walking down the street, lost, looking for the family's old house. He didn't remember the address exactly, but he managed to get here." Michael let the roses fall to the floor. The impact of the red petals on the white marble echoed through the room like a silent scream. "What do you mean my father is here? Did he escape from the medical center?" His voice came out louder than intended, and Dorothy made the gesture for silence again. "Please, sir, don't shout. He gets agitated when he hears loud voices." She approached, tears beginning to form in her tired eyes. "I didn't know what to do. I found him on Tuesday morning when I was coming to work. He was on the sidewalk, crying, saying he wanted to go home." The reality began to form in Michael's mind like pieces of a terrible puzzle. His father had escaped from the most expensive private medical center in New York, where he paid $15,000 a month for the best geriatric care available. Had he escaped for what? To return to a house that no longer even existed? "And why didn't you call me immediately?" he asked, trying to control the anger and confusion growing in his chest. "Why did you hide this from me for 3 days?" Dorothy wiped her eyes with the edge of her apron. "Because I knew you would send him back right away. And he was so happy to be home, sir. So happy that it broke my heart to think of separating him from this feeling." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. The sound of footsteps from the back grew closer. Michael realized his father was moving through the hallway, probably looking for something, or for someone. Guilt began to tighten his stomach when he remembered the last time he had visited the medical center. It had been almost 2 months ago, during a quick 15-minute visit between meetings. "Dorothy, explain to me properly what happened," he said, sitting heavily on the living room sofa. "From the beginning." The housekeeper took a deep breath, like someone preparing to tell a story that hurt just to remember. "On Tuesday, I was coming to work on the 7:30 bus. When I got off at the Avenue stop, I saw an elderly gentleman walking slowly on the sidewalk. He was lost, looking at house numbers as if searching for something." She paused to wipe more tears that insisted on falling. "When I got closer, I recognized it was Mr. Henry. He was wearing that grey outfit from the medical center, somewhat wrinkled, and had no documents or anything, just a little identification bracelet on his wrist. Michael visualized the scene and felt a tightening in his heart. His father, a man who had built a small accounting firm from scratch, who had raised 2 children alone after his wife got sick, wandering the streets like a lost beggar. When I called him by name, his eyes lit up, continued Dorothy. He said, "Dorothy, my dear, it's so good to see you. Can you help me get home? I got lost." And then I couldn't, Mr. Michael. I couldn't tell him that the family house didn't exist anymore. Michael's childhood home had been sold 5 years earlier, when his parents moved to a smaller apartment after retirement. The apartment had been sold after his father entered the medical center. Technically, Henry no longer had any home, aside from the medical center his son had chosen for him. "So I brought him here," said Dorothy, her voice almost disappearing. "I thought it would only be until I could get in touch with you, but then I saw how happy he was to be in a house again, in a family again. And I couldn't make the call." The noise from the back stopped. Complete silence took over the mansion. Michael and Dorothy stared at each other, unsure if this was good or bad. Then a faint but clear voice echoed through the hallway. "Dorothy, where are you, my dear? You disappeared." The housekeeper quickly stood up. "I'm coming, Mr. Henry. I'm just here in the living room." She looked at Michael with a silent plea in her eyes. "Please, Mr. Michael, let me go calm him down first. He gets confused when the routine changes." Michael nodded, still processing the situation. Dorothy disappeared down the hallway, and he could hear her gentle voice talking with his father. "I was here tidying up the living room, Mr. Henry. Would you like some coffee? I made the kind you like, really strong." "Ah, wonderful. You're an angel, Dorothy. You know, you remind me so much of my Margaret. The same patience, the same caring way." His father's voice sounded stronger now, animated. Michael felt a stab in his chest. Margaret was his mother, who had lost her battle with cancer 2 years earlier. His father always said the housekeeper had the same gentle way about her, especially when caring for someone who was sick. During his mother's final months, Dorothy had helped greatly with the home care. He stood up and walked slowly down the hallway, trying to understand how he had reached this point. How had his father managed to escape from such a reputable private medical center? How had he made it all the way to Beverly Hills? And why, of all the people in the world, had he run into Dorothy of all people? As he approached the guest room at the back, Michael could see through the crack in the door. His father was sitting on the edge of the bed, wearing clean pajamas that definitely weren't from the medical center. Dorothy was arranging the pillows behind him, with the same care a daughter would have for her own father. "Dorothy, tell me something," said Henry, holding the housekeeper's hand. "When is my son coming? It's been a while since I've seen Michael. He's been very busy with business, right?" The question hit Michael like a punch in the stomach. His father was waiting for him. Still waiting, after 2 months without visits, after 6 months of hospitalization, after feeling abandoned to the point of running away from where he was. "He'll be here soon, Mr. Henry. Mr. Michael works a lot, but he always thinks of you," replied Dorothy, with a gentleness that contrasted with the reproachful look she cast in the direction where she knew Michael was listening. "I know he's a good son," said Henry, lying back on the pillows. "I just wish he knew that I miss him. You know how it is, right, Dorothy? We get old and start thinking we're bothering everyone." Michael had to lean against the wall. His father's words echoed in his mind like a sentence. He had hospitalized his father thinking he was doing what was best for him. 24-hour medical care, therapeutic activities, physical therapy, medications on time. Everything money could buy. But he had forgotten the one thing money couldn't buy: presence. "You never bother anyone," said Dorothy, adjusting the covers. "You're a very dear person, and I'm sure your son knows that." "Sometimes I get confused, you know," said Henry, his voice growing softer. "Sometimes I don't remember exactly where I am or what happened. But one thing I always remember: I raised 2 good children. Michael and Jennifer are my greatest pride." Michael closed his eyes. Jennifer was his sister, who lived in Miami with her family. She called her father every week but could only travel to New York every 3 months because of work and her young children. Between the two children, Michael was the one who was closer, the one who had more means to care for his father, and yet he had chosen the easiest way out. "Mr. Henry, would you like me to play that song you like?" asked Dorothy, picking up a small radio that Michael hadn't noticed before. "Oh, yes, those Frank Sinatra songs that Margaret loved so much. You remember everything, my dear." The soft sound of My Way began to play quietly. Michael remembered how his parents used to dance to that song in the living room when he was a child, how his father would hum the lyrics while his mother laughed and called him off-key, how everything had changed after she was gone. Dorothy left the room slowly, closing the door almost completely. In the hallway, she and Michael stared at each other in silence for long seconds. The awkwardness was palpable. "Doctor, I know I did wrong," she said finally. "I know you have every right to be angry with me and even send me away, but I couldn't do any different." Michael took a deep breath. "Dorothy, tell me how he is, physically, mentally. Tell me everything that happened in these 3 days." They returned to the living room where the roses were still scattered on the floor. Dorothy gathered them as she spoke, an automatic reflex from her years of caring for that house. On the first day, he was very confused. He asked for Mrs. Margaret, wanted to know why the house was different. I explained that we were at his son's house and he accepted it well. She placed the roses in a vase with water as if it were the most natural gesture in the world. But at night, he became agitated. He said he wanted to leave, that wasn't his place. I stayed with him until he fell asleep, singing those songs he said his mother used to sing to him when he was a child. Michael was surprised. He didn't know his father still remembered the childhood songs. At the medical center, the medical reports only talked about memory deterioration, loss of cognitive functions, need for stronger medication. "The second day was better," Dorothy continued. "He woke up calmer, asked if he could help with anything around the house. I let him fold some clothes, sort some objects. He was happy to feel useful." The housekeeper paused, as if deciding whether she should say something more. "Mr. Michael, can I say something? Your father isn't as confused as the doctors at the medical center said. He has moments where he gets lost, yes, but most of the time he is lucid, especially when he feels loved." Dorothy's words echoed in the silence of the room. Michael thought about the recent conversations with the doctors at the medical center, who always emphasized the need for stronger medication, specialized care, preparation for a condition that would only tend to get worse. "And how did he escape from the medical center?" asked Michael, still trying to understand the whole situation. "He told me last night at a time when he was very lucid," said Dorothy, sitting on the edge of the armchair. "It seems he had been planning it for weeks. He watched the nurses' schedules, knew when there were fewer people in the hallway." She took a deep breath before continuing. "Mr. Henry said that every night he would look out the bedroom window, thinking about his family, that he cried in secret because he felt he had been forgotten." Guilt tightened Michael's chest even more. "But I pay for the best medical center in the city. He has everything he needs there." "Mr. Michael, with all due respect," said Dorothy, looking directly into his eyes, "your father doesn't need things. He needs affection. He needs to feel important to someone." The silence that followed was broken by the sound of the phone ringing. Michael looked at the caller ID and felt his blood run cold. It was from St. Andrew's Medical Center. Dorothy saw it too and turned pale. "Mr. Patterson, this is Dr. Susan from the Medical Center's administration. We've been trying to reach you for 2 days about a delicate situation involving your father." Michael swallowed hard. "What kind of situation?" "Mr. Henry disappeared from the medical center on Tuesday morning. We've already activated all security protocols, contacted hospitals in the area, but we still have no news of him. Do you have any information that could help us?" The lie came out of Michael's mouth before he could think. "No, doctor. I haven't had any news from my father since last Sunday, when I spoke with you on the phone. I understand, Mr. Patterson. I must inform you that if we don't locate the patient by tomorrow, we will be required to report the disappearance to the proper authorities. It's the institution's protocol." Michael's heart raced. "I understand. If I hear anything, I'll contact you immediately." After he hung up, he and Dorothy looked at each other in silence. The scale of the problem was becoming clear. His father wasn't just an elderly man who had gone out for a walk. He was an officially missing patient from a medical institution. "Mr. Michael, what are we going to do?" asked Dorothy, her voice trembling. Michael ran his hands through his hair, trying to think. "I don't know, Dorothy. Honestly, I don't know." From the back room, Henry's voice called again. "Dorothy, can you come here for a minute?" The housekeeper looked at Michael, waiting for an answer. He nodded. "Go attend to him. I need to think." Alone in the living room, Michael walked to the window that looked out onto the back garden. It was the same garden where he had played as a child, where his father had planted a guava tree when he turned 10. The tree was still there, now quite large, bearing fruit every year. But how long had it been since Michael had eaten a guava from that tree? How long since he'd spent a simple afternoon with his father? The truth hurt more than any revelation of failed business deals. He had become exactly the kind of son he had always criticized when younger, the kind who puts their parents in an institution and visits occasionally, more out of obligation than love. Dorothy returned from the room with a worried expression. "Mr. Michael, your father is asking if you've arrived from work. He heard your voice on the phone and wants to greet his son." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. Michael felt his legs trembling. He wasn't prepared to face his father at that moment. How would he explain his presence? How would he look into the eyes of the man who raised him and pretend he didn't know he had run away because he felt abandoned? "Dorothy, I don't know what to say to him." "You don't need to say anything special. You just need to be present. That's all he wants." The simplicity of the housekeeper's words contrasted with the complexity of Michael's feelings. He walked slowly down the hallway, each step weighing like lead. At the bedroom door, he took a deep breath before entering. His father was sitting in the armchair beside the bed, flipping through an old magazine. When he saw his son, his eyes lit up with such genuine joy that Michael almost lost his composure. "Michael, my son!" Henry stood up with difficulty but with enthusiasm. "I'm so glad you're here. I've missed you." The hug his father gave was long and tight, as if wanting to make up for all the time of absence. Michael smelled the familiar scent, the same cologne his father had worn for decades, mixed with the smell of neutral soap and a hint of medicine. "Hi, Dad. How are you?" The question came out automatically, but Michael realized he really wanted to know the answer. "I'm fine, son. Very well. Dorothy is taking care of me like a daughter. You chose a very special housekeeper for our family." Henry sat back down, gesturing for Michael to sit too. "Our family." The words echoed in Michael's mind. It had been a long time since he'd heard his father refer to them as a unit, a family. At the medical center during the few visits, his father always spoke about you and me, as if he were a stranger talking about people he knew from afar. "Dad, how did you get here? I thought you were at the medical center." Henry looked confused for a moment, as if trying to organize his memories. "Medical center? Ah, yes, that place. I left there, son. It wasn't a good place for me." "Why? Did something happen there?" His father looked at his own hands, which were trembling slightly. "Nothing bad happened, no. The people there were polite, the rooms were clean, the food was good, but—" He stopped, as if searching for the right words. "But what, Dad?" "But I felt dead, Michael, as if I had stopped existing for everyone who mattered." The words came out quietly, loaded with a deep sadness Michael had never noticed before. "You know I always cared about you, Dad. That's why I chose the best medical center, with the best doctors." Henry raised his hand, gently interrupting. "Son, I know you did everything thinking of my well-being. I know you spent a lot of money that you worried about my health, but when we get old, we start needing different things." "Like what?" "We need to feel needed, loved. We need to know we still matter to someone. At the medical center, I was just another forgotten old man that the family visited when they had time." The sentence hit Michael like a slap in the face. "Dad, I never forgot about you. It's just that work." "I know, my son. I know you work hard, that you have responsibilities. I'm not complaining about you. I'm just explaining why I needed to leave there. Dorothy appeared in the doorway with a tray of coffee and cookies. Excuse me, I'll just leave this here. She placed the tray on the table next to the armchair and discreetly left. Look at this wonder, said Henry, picking up a cup of coffee. Dorothy makes coffee that reminds me of what your mother used to make. It has the same care, you know. Michael picked up his cup too, mainly to have something to do with his hands. The coffee was really very good, strong and aromatic. Dad, tell me about this departure from the medical center. Henry smiled, and for the first time in a long time Michael saw a mischievous sparkle in his father's eyes. Oh, I planned it just right. I observed everyone's routine for weeks. I knew that every Tuesday, at 7 in the morning, there were fewer people in the hallways because it was the shift change day. You remember all that? Son, I may be forgetting some things, but I still know how to think, especially when it's something important to me. Henry took a sip of coffee. I left through the back door, caught a taxi on the avenue, and asked the driver to take me to the old family home. And how did you get here? The driver took me to the old house, but when we got there I got confused. There was another family living there, other people. Then I remembered that you had sold the house. Henry paused, stirring the sugar in his coffee. I asked the driver to drop me off on the avenue because I wanted to think, and it was while walking that Dorothy found me. The father's version matched what Dorothy had told. There were no contradictions, no mental confusion, just an elderly man who had carefully planned an escape to try to return home. Dad, why didn't you call me? Why didn't you tell me you were unhappy at the medical center? Henry placed the cup on the saucer slowly, with the precision of someone choosing their words. Because I knew you would get too worried, that you would want to solve the problem by switching medical centers, hiring more doctors, buying more things. And would that be wrong? It wouldn't be wrong, son, but it wouldn't solve what was really bothering me. Henry looked directly into Michael's eyes. What bothered me was knowing that I was no longer needed by anyone. The silence that followed was loaded with meaning. Michael realized that during all those months, he had treated his father as a problem to be solved, not as a person with feelings and emotional needs. Dad, you were always missed. I just didn't know how to show it properly. I know, my son, and I'm not blaming you for anything. I'm just trying to explain why I needed to leave that place. Henry stood up and walked to the bedroom window. You know, from here you can see the guava tree I planted for you when you were little. Michael stood up too and stood beside his father at the window. The tree was laden with ripe fruit. I remember when you planted it, I thought it would never grow. And look how beautifully it grew. Just like you, who grew up and became a successful man. Henry put his hand on his son's shoulder. But do you know the difference between you and the guava tree? What? The guava tree stayed close to home and you went very far away even though you lived right next door. The father's words had a simplicity that cut deeper than any complex criticism. Michael understood that it wasn't about physical distance, but emotional distance. Dad, I want to try to do differently from now on. I know you do, son. But first, we need to resolve the situation we're in now. Henry returned to the armchair, suddenly looking more tired. Those people from the medical center must be looking for me, right? Michael nodded. They already called here. They're worried. And what did you say? That I didn't know anything. Henry looked surprised at his son. You lied for my sake? I lied because I need to better understand this whole situation before making any decision. What decision, son? The question hung in the air. Michael realized he didn't know what decision to make. Should he take his father back to the medical center and pretend nothing had happened? Should he look for another institution? Should he try to care for his father at home? I don't know yet, Dad, but we'll figure it out together. Henry smiled, and Michael realized it had been a long time since he'd seen that genuine smile on his father's face. You know, this is the longest conversation we've had in months. It was true. During visits to the medical center, Michael was always anxious to leave. He'd ask how his father was doing, hear the basic answers, comment about the weather or some news, and make up an excuse to leave. This time they were really talking. Dad, can I ask you a question? Of course. What did you miss most there at the medical center? Henry thought for a few seconds. Feeling useful. Having someone ask my opinion about something. Being able to care for someone, even if it was just holding a hand or giving advice. He paused. And knowing that when I died, someone would genuinely miss me, not just feel the void in their wallet. Dad, don't be angry, son. It's natural at this age to think about these things, but it's different to think about passing away knowing you truly mattered in someone's life. Michael felt tears forming in his eyes. When was the last time he had cried? When was the last time he had allowed himself to feel something beyond responsibility and obligation? You matter a lot to me, Dad. I just didn't know how to show it. I know, Michael. And do you know how I know? How? Because you're here now. Because you chose to stay and talk with me instead of taking me back to the medical center right away. Henry stood up and hugged his son again. That means more to me than you can imagine. The hug was interrupted by a soft knock on the door. Dorothy appeared with a worried expression. Excuse me, Mr. Michael. There's a lady at the door asking for Mr. Henry. She said she's from the medical center. Michael's blood ran cold. What do you mean? A young woman in a white uniform said she's doing routine visits in the neighborhood, looking for a patient who disappeared. Henry turned pale. They came to get me. Calm down, Dad. Michael tried to keep his voice steady, but inside he was panicking. Dorothy, is she alone? It seems so. She has a clipboard, asking if anyone has seen an elderly gentleman walking around the street. What did you say? I said I hadn't seen anyone like that if I had, I would have helped. Dorothy looked at Henry affectionately. But she wants to speak with the homeowner. Said she'll come back later if she doesn't find anyone now. The situation was getting complicated. Michael needed to think fast. Dad, can you stay quiet here in the room while I talk to her? Of course, son. But promise me one thing. What? That you won't turn me in without us talking first? The promise his father asked for was simple but loaded with meaning. It was a request for respect, for consideration, for treatment as a person capable of having a say about his own life. I promise, Dad. Michael left the room and walked to the front door, trying to organize his thoughts. Outside, a young nurse of about 25 waited patiently with a clipboard in her hand and some papers. Good afternoon. Are you the owner of this residence? Yes, I'm Michael Patterson. How can I help you? My name is Ashley. I'm a nurse from St. Andrew's Medical Center. We're looking for a patient who disappeared last Tuesday, and we're conducting a neighborhood search. I see. How can I assist? Ashley showed a photo of Henry. This is Mr. Henry Patterson. He's 72 years old, shows signs of early dementia, and might be confused about where he lives. Have you seen anyone like that in the area? Seeing his father's photo in a stranger's hands, being treated as a missing person, gave Michael a strange feeling. No, I haven't seen anyone like that around the neighborhood. Are you sure? He might have come by asking for directions or looking lost. I'm sure. If I'd seen someone in that condition, I would have helped. The lie came out easier than Michael expected. Ashley wrote something on her clipboard. I understand. Do you live alone here? I live alone, but I have a housekeeper who comes every day. Why do you ask? Sometimes people with dementia are drawn to houses with domestic activity. They feel attracted to environments that remind them of home, family. The nurse's observation was unsettling because it made too much sense. His father hadn't run away randomly. He had run toward the idea of home, family, belonging. If I see anyone like that, I'll contact you, said Michael, trying to end the conversation. Thank you very much for your cooperation. Here's my card with the medical center's phone number. Any information, even if it seems insignificant, could be very helpful. After the nurse left, Michael stood at the door for several minutes, holding the card. Reality was becoming increasingly clear. His father was officially a missing patient, and he was lying to medical authorities. The legal implications began forming in his mind. Dorothy appeared beside him. Mr. Michael, what are we going to do? I don't know, Dorothy. This is getting very complicated. Are you going to turn your father in? The housekeeper's question had an accusatory tone that Michael didn't like, but understood perfectly. I'm not going to turn in my father, Dorothy, but I need to think of a solution that doesn't harm anyone. And what would that solution be? That's what I need to figure out. They returned to the room where Henry was sitting on the bed, looking out the window. When he saw his son, his eyes showed a mixture of hope and fear. "So, Michael, what did she want?" "They're looking for you, Dad. They showed your photo, asked if anyone had seen you." "And you said no." "I did." Henry sighed deeply. "Son, I don't want you getting into trouble because of me. If you think it's better to take me back..." "Dad, first of all, I need to understand one thing. What do you really want? If you could choose freely, what would you do?" The question took Henry by surprise. He thought for a few seconds, as if no one had asked his opinion in a long time. "I'd like to stay close to family. It doesn't have to be here in this house, but near you all. I'd like to be able to help with something, even if it's just small things. I'd like to feel useful again." He looked at Dorothy. "And I'd want people around me who genuinely care about me, not just out of professional obligation." "And the medical center? What was bad there?" "Nothing was bad, son. It had everything good except the one thing I needed, family love." Henry stood up and walked over to Michael. "At the medical center I was the patient in room 15. Here with Dorothy, I'm Mr. Henry, a person who matters." The difference, his father pointed out, was simple but profound. At the medical center he received excellent professional care. At home he received personal care, even if less specialized. "Dad, but what if you need specialized medical care? And what if there's an emergency?" "Son, I might need doctors even if I'm at the medical center. The difference is that if something happens to me here, I'll pass away knowing I was loved until the last minute." His father's words echoed in the room with a disarming simplicity. Michael realized he was facing a choice that went far beyond practical or medical concerns. It was a choice about values, about what truly matters at the end of life. "Dorothy," said Michael, turning to the housekeeper, "may I speak with you about something serious?" "Of course, Mr. Michael." "If my father stayed here, would you be able to care for him? I'm not asking if you're willing, I'm asking if you're actually capable." Dorothy thought for a few seconds before answering. "Mr. Michael, I cared for my own mother in her final years. I know how to give medication on time. I know when to call a doctor. I know how to handle confusion episodes." She looked at Henry with affection. "And your father isn't that dependent. He bathes himself, dresses himself, eats by himself. He just needs companionship and someone to manage his medications and meals." "What about your work here at home? How would that work?" "I can come every day, stay the whole day if needed. I can even sleep here some days of the week if you think it's necessary." Michael realized Dorothy had already considered all these questions during the 3 days she'd cared for his father alone. This wasn't an impulsive decision on her part. "What about medical care?" he asked. "We can hire private doctors for home visits, physical therapists, nurses, any specialist your father needs." Dorothy seemed to have answers for all of Michael's practical concerns. "What about the costs of all this?" "Mr. Michael, with the money you were spending at the medical center, we could set up a very good care structure here at home, and there would still be money left over." Michael hadn't considered this financial aspect. Indeed, the $15,000 monthly from the medical center could pay for plenty of home care. "Dad, do you understand that even at home, you'd have to follow medication schedules, do exercises, maintain discipline?" "I understand, son. I'm not running away from medical responsibilities. I'm running away from loneliness." Henry returned to his armchair, seeming tired from the intense conversation. "But I'll understand if you decide it's better to take me back. I won't complain." The resignation in his father's voice was what moved Michael the most. Henry was submitting to his son's decision, even knowing it might mean returning to a place where he felt unhappy. "Dad, can you give me some time to think? I won't make any hasty decisions." "Of course, my son, you have a lifetime of responsibilities, I understand." Michael left the room and went to the back porch, where he used to smoke when stressed. He hadn't smoked in months, but at that moment he felt the urge. Instead, he just watched the garden, trying to organize his thoughts. The situation was too complex for a quick decision. On one hand, there were legal and medical issues. His father was officially a missing patient from a medical center, and he was lying about his whereabouts. This could bring serious legal problems. On the other hand, there was the emotional aspect. For the first time in months, he'd seen his father truly happy. He'd talked with him for over an hour, something that hadn't happened in a long time. He'd seen hope in the eyes of the man who raised him. And there was Dorothy, who had risked her own job to care for someone she loved, who had lied to him for 3 days, not out of malice but compassion, who was willing to change her entire work routine to care for an elderly man who wasn't even related to her. The phone rang again, interrupting his thoughts. It was his sister Jennifer calling from Miami. "Hi, Michael. How are you?" "Hi, Jennifer. Everything complicated." "Why? Did something happen?" Michael hesitated. Should he tell his sister about the situation? Jennifer had always been emotionally closer to their father, even though she lived far away. Perhaps she could help him better understand the whole situation. "Jennifer, I need to tell you something, but it's complicated." "Tell me, Michael. I'm worried." "Dad ran away from the medical center on Tuesday. He's been here at home for 3 days, hiding." The silence on the other end of the line lasted almost a minute. "What do you mean, Michael? Explain properly." Michael told his sister the whole story, from the moment he arrived home and found Dorothy making a gesture for silence to the conversation he had just had with their father. Jennifer listened to everything without interrupting. "Michael," she finally said, "how did you not notice that Dad was unhappy at the medical center?" "What do you mean?" "The last few times I spoke with him on the phone, he seemed depressed. He always asked when you were going to visit him, always said he was homesick, but the doctors said he was adapting well." "Michael, doctors see the medical side. They don't see the emotional side." Jennifer sighed deeply. "I was planning to travel to New York next month specifically to talk to you about this." "About what?" "About the possibility of taking Dad out of the medical center and arranging home care." Michael was surprised. "You were already thinking about that?" "Yes, I've been researching private caregivers, doctors who make home visits. I was even thinking about moving to New York to be closer to him." His sister's revelation changed the entire perspective of the situation. Michael wasn't the only one questioning whether the medical center was really the best place for their father. "Jennifer, what about legally and the issues with the medical center?" "Michael, Dad isn't a prisoner. He's a lucid adult most of the time, and he has the right to decide where he wants to live." Jennifer paused. "The medical center can't force him to stay there if he doesn't want to." "But he ran away without telling anyone. That's not normal." "Of course it's not normal. Do you know why he ran away? Because he didn't feel heard when he tried to express that he was unhappy." His sister's words made sense. During his visits to the medical center, Michael always asked how his father was, but never asked if he was happy, if he was satisfied, if he wanted something different. "Jennifer, what do you think I should do?" "I think you should talk honestly with Dad about the available options, and you should give him the right to choose." "But what if he chooses to stay at home and it doesn't work out? What if he needs care that we can't provide?" "Michael, what if it does work? What if he becomes happier and healthier at home than at the medical center?" His sister's question flipped the entire perspective of the problem. Instead of focusing on the risks of taking their father out of the medical center, she was focusing on the possible benefits. "Jennifer, can you come to New York in the next few days? I think we need to make this decision together." "Yes, I can. I'll see if I can get a ticket for tomorrow." "But Michael." "Yes?" "In the meantime, don't let Dad go back to the medical center without the two of you having a proper conversation. He deserves to be heard." After hanging up the phone, Michael felt a little calmer, knowing that his sister was thinking about the same issues and that she supported the idea of home care gave more weight to the decision he was considering. He returned to the room where his father was resting. Dorothy had brought a plate of fruit and was helping Henry take his afternoon medication. "Dad, I spoke with Jennifer. She's coming to New York tomorrow." Henry's eyes lit up. "Jennifer is coming? That's wonderful. It's been a while since I've seen my daughter. She wants to talk with us about this whole situation, make decisions together as a family." "That's good, son. That's always how your mother wanted important decisions to be made, as a family, with everyone having a voice." Michael remembered the family meetings his mother used to organize when he and Jennifer were teenagers. Any important decision was discussed at the kitchen table, with everyone giving their opinion until they reached a consensus. "Dad, while we wait for Jennifer to arrive, could you do me a favor?" "Of course. What do you want?" "I want you to tell me exactly how you felt at the medical center, without being afraid of hurting me, without trying to protect my feelings. I really want to understand." Henry looked at Dorothy, who nodded encouragingly. "Are you sure, son? Some things might be hard to hear." "I'm sure." Henry took a deep breath like someone preparing for a painful confession. "Michael, I felt like I was slowly dying, not in body, but in soul." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. "What do you mean, Dad?" "Every day was the same as the last. Wake up, have coffee with people who didn't really know me, do activities that had no meaning to me, have lunch, rest, have dinner, sleep, and the next day, everything the same." Michael sat beside his father on the bed, but there was physical therapy, recreational activities, medical care. "There was all that, son, but there was no purpose. I felt like an object being cared for, not like a person living." Henry took Michael's hand. "Do you know what the worst part was?" "What?" "It was when Sunday came and I'd wait for you to visit. I'd dress nicely, comb my hair, pick out my best shirt. I'd sit in the living room chair waiting. And when I didn't come, then I knew another week would pass without me mattering to anyone." His father's words were like punches to Michael's stomach. He visualized the scene, his father getting dressed hopefully every Sunday, waiting for a visit that often didn't come. "Dad, why did you never tell me this directly?" "Because I knew you'd feel sorry for me. You'd feel guilty. And I didn't want you visiting me out of guilt. I wanted you to visit out of love." "But I always visited you out of love." "I know, son. But hurried love, love with a scheduled end time, love with one eye on the clock." Henry squeezed his son's hand. "You'd arrive at the medical center already thinking about when to leave." It was true. Michael always came to visits with a mental list of things he needed to do afterward. He never allowed himself to relax and simply be present with his father. And here at home, how was it different? Here I felt useful again. Dorothy let me help fold clothes, pick the ripest fruits for smoothies, water the garden plants. Henry smiled. Small things, but they reminded me that I can still contribute something. Michael looked at Dorothy, who was organizing his father's medicines with maternal care. "Dorothy, how was it for you to care for him these 3 days?" "It felt natural, Mr. Michael. Your father is a very polite, very grateful person. He helps where he can, tells interesting stories, gives good advice when I ask." She smiled at Henry. "And he reminds me a lot of my mother, the same caring way of treating people." "Dorothy lost her mother last year," Henry explained. "They became very close during her final years." Michael realized there was an emotional connection between Dorothy and his father that went beyond a professional relationship. She saw a father figure in him, and he saw a caring daughter figure in her. "Dorothy, can I ask you something personal?" "Of course, Mr. Michael. Why did you decide to help my father? Why didn't you call me immediately when you found him on the street?" Dorothy stayed quiet for a few seconds, as if organizing painful thoughts. "Because when my mother was sick, she told me something I never forgot." "What did she say?" "She said, 'My dear, when I'm gone, if you see any elderly person needing affection, give them the affection you won't be able to give me anymore.' And when I saw Mr. Henry lost on the street, I remembered that phrase." The simplicity and sincerity of Dorothy's answer deeply touched Michael. She hadn't acted out of self-interest or professional obligation. She had acted out of love, out of genuine compassion. "And what did your family think about you spending 3 days here, taking care of my father?" "I live alone, Mr. Michael. My children are adults and live in other cities. My husband died 5 years ago." Dorothy organized the last pills. "Taking care of your father gave me a sense of family that I hadn't had in a long time." Michael began to understand that the situation benefited everyone involved. His father felt useful and loved. Dorothy felt needed and had a father figure to care for, and he himself was discovering a side of his father he hadn't known for years. Dad, tell me what the days at the medical center were like, in detail. Henry sighed. I woke up at 6 in the morning with the nurses moving around the room. I took a shower, took my medicine, went to have breakfast in a large hall with 50 other elderly people. And then? Then there was half an hour of recreational activity, which was usually bingo or music, then half an hour of physical therapy, then lunch, then mandatory rest until 3 in the afternoon. And in the afternoon? Another half hour of activity, a snack. Then I was free until dinner. Free to do what? Sit in the room watching television with other old people who also had nothing to do. And at night, dinner at 7, medicine at 8, everyone to their rooms at 9. Henry looked out the window. Michael, I felt like I was in a well-equipped prison. But what about the other patients? Didn't you make any friends? Some were nice, yes, but most were worse off than me, already quite confused, or very depressed. It wasn't an environment that encouraged joy in living. Michael tried to imagine what it would be like to live in that routine every day, waking up knowing the day would be exactly like the previous one and the next, having no decisions to make, no responsibilities, no sense of purpose. And here at home, what was the routine like? Here I woke up when my body asked for it, had breakfast in the kitchen talking with Dorothy about the day's plans. I helped choose what we would have for lunch, helped prepare some simple things. Henry smiled. After lunch I stayed on the porch reading or watching the little birds in the garden. In the afternoon I helped water the plants or fold laundry. And at night? At night Dorothy and I would talk about life, about family stories, about recipes your mother used to make. Or we'd listen to music, those songs your mother liked. The difference was striking. At the medical center, his father was a patient following an institutional routine. At home, he was a person participating in a familiar household routine. Dad, do you remember to take your medicine by yourself? I do. Dorothy taught me a simple way to organize the week's pills in a little box. It's easy to manage. And if there's a medical emergency? Michael, if I have a medical emergency, it can happen anywhere. At the medical center, at home, on the street. Henry held his son's hand again. The difference is that if it happens here, I'll pass away surrounded by people who love me. If it happens at the medical center, I'll pass away surrounded by people who are being paid to care for me. His father's observation was profound and unsettling. Michael had never thought about the humanization of life's final moments. Dad, answer something for me with total honesty. Go ahead. If I decided it would be better for you to go back to the medical center, how would you feel? Henry thought for a long time before answering. I'd feel sad, but I'd understand. I know you have responsibilities. I know taking care of me at home is more complicated for you. But how would you really feel? I'd feel like I was being abandoned again, like my feelings don't matter to the family. The brutal honesty of the answer left Michael speechless. His father was clearly saying that returning to the medical center would be interpreted as another abandonment. And if I decided to try home care? I'd feel grateful. I'd feel like I still matter enough for the family to make an effort for me. The contrast between the two answers clearly showed what the father wanted, even while trying to be understanding of his son's difficulties. Dad, what are you most afraid of about staying at home? I'm afraid of being too much trouble for you all. I'm afraid that at some point you'll get tired of me and feel obligated to put up with me. And what do you want most? I want to feel like part of the family again. I want to be able to contribute something, even if it's just a little. I want to die knowing I was loved until the end. Dorothy, who had remained quiet during the entire conversation, approached with tears in her eyes. Mr. Henry, you won't be too much trouble for anyone, and you'll never be a burden. You're a blessing. The genuine affection in the housekeeper's voice moved Michael. He realized Dorothy wasn't pretending compassion for professional reasons. She had genuinely grown fond of his father, as if he were a dear relative. Dorothy, can I ask you a difficult question? Of course, Mr. Michael. If caring for my father becomes too difficult, if he gets worse and needs more intensive care, will you have the courage to tell me the truth? Yes, I will. Because your father's well-being is more important than anything else. If we reach a point where I can't provide the care he needs, I'll be the first to say so. Dorothy's honesty reassured Michael. She wasn't romanticizing the situation or promising impossible things. And if he has more serious confusion episodes? Mr. Michael, I went through that with my mother. I know how to handle mental confusion. I know when it's time to call for medical help. And your father isn't that confused. He has moments of forgetfulness, but most of the time he's lucid. How do you assess his mental state? Dorothy looked at Henry affectionately. I think his confusion at the medical center was more emotional than mental. He was lost in life, not lost in his mind. Dorothy's observation made a lot of sense to Michael. During the conversation they'd just had, his father had demonstrated complete lucidity, clear memory of events, analytical capacity, and mature emotional expression. Dad, can I ask you one more question? As many as you want, son. At the medical center, the doctor said you were having more frequent confusion episodes. Was that true? Henry hesitated for a moment. It was true that I got confused sometimes, but it wasn't confusion because of illness. It was confusion because of sadness. How so? When you get very sad, very alone, your head doesn't work right. I'd get confused about dates, about times, about where I was, because none of it made sense to me. And here at home. Here I haven't been confused a single day, because here things make sense. Here I know why I'm waking up. I know what purpose everything I do serves. His father's explanation was surprisingly lucid and psychologically consistent. The mental confusion could really be related to depression and emotional isolation. Ricardo, said Dorothy, can I tell you something your father told me yesterday? Go ahead. He said that at the medical center, sometimes he pretended to be more confused than he really was. Why? Because when he pretended to be confused, the nurses would spend more time with him, talk more, be more caring. Dorothy looked at Henry. He pretended to be lost to receive human attention. The revelation hit Michael like a punch in the stomach. His father had faked symptoms of dementia because it was the only way to receive affection and attention at the medical center. Is it true, Dad? Henry lowered his eyes, ashamed. It's true. I know it was wrong, but it was the only way to get someone to stop and talk with me a little longer. Dad, I know it was an ugly lie, Michael, but I was so starved for human affection that I would do anything to get a few extra minutes of attention. His father's confession revealed a loneliness so deep it was almost inhuman. A man feigning mental illness to receive crumbs of human affection. At the medical center, when I pretended not to remember someone's name, the person would stay by my side explaining, talking, trying to help me remember, Henry continued. It was the only time someone was truly present with me. Michael felt a mix of anger and sadness he had never experienced before. Anger at the system that had reduced his father to that condition, and sadness for not having noticed the suffering. Why didn't you tell me this before? Because I knew you would feel sorry for me. You would visit me more out of pity. And I didn't want pity. I wanted real love. But it was real love, Dad. It was worried, anxious love in a hurry to leave. It wasn't calm, present love that has time for real conversation. The distinction his father made between types of love was precise and painful. Michael loved his father, but expressed that love through responsibility and practical care, not through emotional presence. And now? How do you feel now? Now I feel truly loved. You've been here talking with me for hours, without rush, without anxiety. You're listening to me, you're interested in my opinion. Henry smiled. It's been months since I felt so important to someone. The conversation was interrupted by the sound of the doorbell. Dorothy went to answer it and returned a few minutes later with a worried expression. Doctor, it was a private investigator. He said he was hired by the medical center to do a more detailed search for Mr. Henry. Michael's blood ran cold. What did you say? I said the same thing I told the nurse, that I hadn't seen anyone like that, and that if I had, I would have helped. Dorothy sat down heavily, but he asked more questions. He wanted to know about the house's routine, if there's anyone sick here, if doctors or nurses come. And you answered? I said that you live alone, That I come to clean every day, that there's no sick person in the house. Henry turned pale. Are they doing a serious investigation because of me? Dad, the medical center is required by law to look for missing patients. They're not doing anything wrong. But does that mean they'll soon find out I'm here? Michael didn't know how to respond. The pressure was mounting, and soon it would be impossible to keep the secret. Michael, said Dorothy, this investigator left a card and said he'll come back tomorrow to speak with the homeowner personally. The situation was getting out of control. Michael realized he needed to make a decision quickly, before circumstances forced his hand. Dad, I think the time has come for us to make a definitive decision about this situation. I know, son, and whatever decision you make, I'll accept it without complaining. No, Dad. This time the decision will be made as a family, with everyone giving their opinion. Michael stood up. I'm going to call Jennifer and ask her to come today. It needs to be before the investigator returns. Michael, said Henry, holding his son's arm, promise me something. What? That you'll decide based on what's best for everyone, not just what's easiest or safest. I promise, Dad. Michael left the room and called his sister, explaining the urgency of the situation. Jennifer managed to change her ticket and would arrive in New York by late afternoon the same day. While waiting for Jennifer's arrival, Michael decided to use the time to better understand all the practical aspects of home care. He called some doctors he knew, home care companies, to research prices and possibilities. He discovered that it would indeed be possible to set up a home care structure at a lower cost than the medical center, and potentially with equal or better quality, depending on the professionals hired. He also found out that legally, his father had every right to choose where he wanted to live, as long as he was considered mentally capable of making decisions, which he clearly was. The only complicated issue would be the formal discharge from the medical center, which would require explanations about the disappearance and potentially cause problems with the insurance plan. At 5 in the afternoon, Jennifer arrived by taxi directly from the airport. When she saw her father in the living room, she couldn't control her emotions. Daddy, how are you? The hug between father and daughter lasted several minutes. Michael noticed that Jennifer was crying and that their father was also emotional. Jennifer, my dear daughter, I've missed you so much. Daddy, why did you run away from the medical center? I was worried when Michael told me. Sweetheart, I didn't run away. I came home. The father's simple answer summed up the whole issue clearly. For him, it hadn't been an escape, but a return. Daddy, tell me all about it. Henry repeated for Jennifer the whole story he had told Michael. She listened carefully, asking questions, showing genuine interest in her father's feelings and motivations. Daddy, do you feel mentally capable of making decisions about your own life? I do, sweetheart. I might be forgetting some small things, but about the important things, I still know very well what I want. And what do you want? I want to stay close to family. I want to die knowing I was loved and that I loved back. I want to feel useful as long as I can be useful. Jennifer looked at Michael and then at Dorothy. And you? How do you feel about the possibility of home care? I'm willing to do whatever is necessary, Dorothy said immediately. Your father is a wonderful person and deserves to be cared for with affection. Michael? Michael took a deep breath. I'm scared of the responsibility, but I'm willing to try. I just want to make sure we're doing the right thing. And what would be the right thing, Michael? The thing that makes Dad happy while also ensuring he gets all the medical care he needs. Jennifer nodded. Then let's work to achieve both. They spent the next 2 hours discussing all practical aspects, costs, necessary professionals, home adaptations, care routines, medical emergencies, legal aspects of leaving the medical center. Dorothy proved surprisingly well informed about geriatric care, a result of her experience with her own mother. Jennifer brought information she had researched about home care and specialized caregivers. Michael contributed with the legal and financial aspects. Daddy, Jennifer said finally, the three of us agree to try home care, but you need to understand that if at any point it becomes clear it's not working, we'll need to reevaluate. I understand perfectly, sweetheart. I just ask that you don't give up at the first difficulty. And you also need to commit to following all medical instructions, taking medication correctly, exercising, not hiding health problems. I commit. Michael looked at the family gathered in the living room and realized he was experiencing a historic decision-making moment. It was the first time in years that the three of them were making an important decision together, considering everyone's feelings. So it's decided, he said. Tomorrow morning I'll call the medical center and formalize Dad's discharge. I'll explain that he was here with us and that we decided on home care. Are you going to tell the truth? Asked Dorothy. I'll tell a version of the truth, that Dad left the medical center because he was unhappy, that he sought out his family, and that we decided together on home care. Henry smiled. Kids, you don't know how happy I am. I haven't felt this loved in months. Jennifer stood up and hugged her father again. Daddy, you've always been loved. We just didn't know how to show it properly. And now we're going to learn, said Michael. The phone rang again. It was the medical center, probably with more questions about Dad's whereabouts. But this time Michael answered more calmly. Mr. Patterson? This is Dr. Susan again. We have news about your father. What kind of news? An investigator we hired made some interesting discoveries in the neighborhood. It seems someone saw an elderly gentleman in the area of your house in recent days. Michael took a deep breath. Doctor, actually, I have information about my father. Do you know where he is? Yes, he's here with me at my house. The silence on the other end of the line lasted almost a minute. Mr. Patterson, may I ask how long he's been there? Since Tuesday. And why didn't you inform us earlier? Because I needed to talk with my family about the best decision to make. And what was the decision? We decided on home care. I'll formalize his discharge from the medical center. Another long silence. Mr. Patterson, do you understand that this caused an unnecessary mobilization of resources, concern from the entire team, activation of emergency protocols? I understand, and I apologize for that. But my father is a capable adult and has the right to choose where he wants to stay. Of course he does, but there are proper procedures for that. The doctor is right. I should have contacted you earlier, but the situation was complicated. Doctor, I'll need you to come to the medical center tomorrow with your father to formalize the discharge and resolve some administrative matters. No problem. We'll be there. After hanging up, Michael sat down next to his father and the two women who were making this new phase of family life possible. There, he said. Tomorrow the situation will be officially resolved. And after? Asked Henry. After begins our new phase, a phase where you become an active part of the family again. Dorothy stood up. Well, then I'd better prepare a special dinner to celebrate. Dorothy, said Jennifer, can I help? It's been a while since I've cooked with someone. Of course you can. Let's make that shepherd's pie that Mr. Henry loves. The two women went to the kitchen, chatting animatedly about recipes and seasonings. Michael stayed alone with his father in the living room. Michael, answer me one thing. Yes, Dad. Are you doing this because you really want to or because you feel guilty? The question was direct and necessary. Michael thought carefully before answering. A bit of both, Dad. I feel guilty for taking so long to realize you were unhappy, but mainly, I want to do this because I discovered that I miss you. You miss me? I do. I miss our conversations, your stories, your advice. I miss having a father present in my life, not just a father I visit out of obligation. Henry smiled. And I miss having a son present in my life, not just a son who visits me out of obligation. So shall we try to do things differently from now on? Let's. The sound of laughter came from the kitchen, where Jennifer and Dorothy were clearly having fun while cooking. The smell of home-cooked food began to spread through the house. Dad, can I confess something to you? Of course. I had forgotten how good it is to have a house that feels like a real family. Henry looked around the living room, which for the first time in months was full of life, voices, and laughter. I had forgotten too, son, I had forgotten too. That night the family had dinner together for the first time in years. Dorothy was invited to sit at the table as a family member, not as an employee. Stories were told, plans were made, laughter was shared. Henry was beaming with happiness. Jennifer discovered aspects of her father she had forgotten due to the distance. Michael rediscovered the pleasure of family company without rush, without urgent commitments waiting. Dorothy got emotional several times during dinner because she finally felt part of something bigger, of a family that valued her not only for her work, but for the person she was. When night came, Jennifer decided to sleep at the house to spend more time with her father. Dorothy also stayed, to ensure the transition went smoothly. Michael went to sleep thinking that perhaps that had been the most important decision of his adult life. Not a business decision, not a financial decision, but a decision about fundamental human values. The next morning, the family prepared to go to the medical center to resolve the administrative situation. Henry dressed carefully, choosing a blue shirt that Dorothy had ironed with special care. "Dad, how do you feel about facing the people at the medical center?" "I feel good, son. I didn't do anything wrong. I just chose where I want to live." At the medical center, the reception was polite, but tense. Dr. Susan, a 50-year-old woman with a professional demeanor, received them in her office. "Mr. Henry, how are you feeling?" "I'm very well, doctor. Better than I've been in a long time. Do you understand that your departure caused concern and unnecessary mobilization of resources?" "I understand, and I apologize for that. But I needed to go home." "Why didn't you talk to our team about your feelings? We could have worked together to improve your experience here." Henry looked at his children and then at the doctor. "Because I tried a few times to mention that I was homesick, and I was always told it was normal, that it would pass, that the medications would help. And didn't they help? Medications don't cure homesickness for family, doctor." The father's simple and direct answer left the administrator speechless for a few seconds. "Mr. Henry, are you sure you want to leave the medical center? Here you have specialized care, medical staff 24 hours a day, facilities prepared for emergencies. Doctor, I understand all these advantages, but here there's also no genuine affection, no family, no purpose in life." "What do you mean by purpose in life?" "Here I was taken care of. At home I can take care too. I can help Dorothy. I can give advice to my children. I can feel useful." Michael realized that his father was articulating his feelings much more clearly and maturely than the medical reports suggested. "Mr. Patterson," said the administrator, addressing Michael, "are you sure you can provide the specialized care your father might need?" "Doctor, we will hire qualified professionals for home visits. Doctors, physical therapists, nurses when necessary. The difference is it will be in a family environment, not institutional. And if there are emergencies, we'll be as close to hospitals as we are here, and my father will be surrounded by people who love him." The doctor sighed. "Well, it's your right to choose. I'll prepare the discharge papers." The administrative process took 2 hours, but in the end Henry was officially out of the medical center, free to live wherever he chose. In the car, driving home, Henry held both his children's hands. "Thank you," he said simply. "For what, Dad?" asked Jennifer. "For letting me choose, for listening to me, for treating me like a person, not a problem." "Dad," said Michael, "thank you for teaching us that caring for someone goes far beyond paying for expensive care." When they arrived home, Dorothy was waiting with lunch ready and a radiant smile. "So, how did it go?" "Everything worked out," said Henry. "Now I'm officially a free man to choose where I live." "And you chose to stay here?" "I chose to stay close to those who love me." In the days that followed, the family's new routine settled naturally. Michael rearranged his schedule to work more from home, discovering he was more productive when not stressed with guilt about neglecting his father. Dorothy officially took on the role of primary caregiver, with a salary increase and recognition of her importance to the family. She hired a helper for the heavier housework, so she could better dedicate herself to Henry's care. Jennifer returned to Miami but called daily and planned monthly visits. The relationship between the siblings grew closer, united by their shared care for their father. Henry flourished. His episodes of mental confusion practically disappeared. He regained interest in news, books, and conversations about politics and economics. He helped with household tasks within his limitations, gave advice when asked, and received visits from old friends who had distanced themselves during his time at the medical center. The doctor who made weekly home visits was surprised by the improvement in the patient's overall condition. It's remarkable how a family environment can positively influence mental and even physical health, he commented to Michael. 3 months later, on a Sunday afternoon, the family was gathered on the back porch. Henry was watering the plants while telling childhood stories to Dorothy. Michael was reading the newspaper, but participating in the conversation. Jennifer was visiting with her young children who were playing in the garden. "Michael," said Henry, stopping watering for a moment. "Yes, Dad." "Do you regret the decision we made?" Michael looked around. The house was full of life, laughter, and conversation. His father was visibly happier and healthier. The family was closer. Dorothy had become a second mother to everyone. "I don't regret it one bit, Dad. It was the best decision we've made in years. And I can say these have been the best months of my life since your mother passed away. Why? Because I feel alive again. I have purpose again. I feel loved and needed again." Dorothy approached with a tray of coffee. "And I can say these have been the best months of my life since my husband passed away, because I feel part of a family again." Michael took a cup of coffee and looked at his father. "Dad, can you promise me one thing?" "Of course. That if you ever need care we can't provide at home, you'll tell us honestly, without trying to protect us." "I promise. But will you promise me something too?" "What?" "That if that happens, you'll look for the best possible solution, not just the most convenient one." "We promise." Henry smiled and resumed watering the plants. Then it settled. "Let's take care of each other in the best way possible, always." Jennifer approached with the children. "Daddy, the kids want you to tell that story about the goldfish." "Oh, that story. Let's sit over there in the shade and I'll tell it." The whole Patterson family gathered under the guava tree that Henry had planted decades earlier. The children settled on their grandfather's lap. Dorothy sat beside him like a daughter. Michael and Jennifer leaned against the tree trunk. As Henry told the story with the same magical tone he used when Michael and Jennifer were children, Michael realized this was a moment he would keep forever in his memory. It wasn't a spectacular or extraordinary moment. It was just a normal Sunday afternoon, with the family gathered, listening to stories under a tree. But it was exactly this normality that made the moment special. His father was no longer hidden away in an institution, pretending symptoms to get attention. He was home, being genuinely loved, contributing to the happiness of everyone around him. Dorothy was no longer alone, taking care of an empty house for an absent employer. She was caring for a family that valued her as a person, not just as an employee. And he himself had rediscovered the pleasure of family company, the value of unhurried conversations, the importance of being present in the lives of people he loved. When the story ended and the children ran off to play again, Henry looked at his children. "Thank you," he said again. "For what, Dad?" "For giving me back my dignity. For letting me be a father again, not just an old man being taken care of." "Dad," said Michael, "thank you. For teaching us that love isn't just shown by paying bills but by being present." "And thank you for teaching us," said Jennifer, "that taking care of those we love is a privilege, not a burden." Dorothy discreetly wiped her eyes. "And thank you for teaching me that family isn't just about blood. It's about who chooses to love and care for each other." The sun was setting, painting the garden with golden hues. The guava tree swayed gently in the evening breeze. The voices of playing children echoed through the backyard. Michael looked at that scene and thought about how close he had come to losing all this, how close he had come to letting his father waste away in a medical center, deprived of family love, while he himself deprived himself of the company and wisdom of the one who had raised him. "Dad," he said, "can I make a confession?" "Of course." "I thought taking care of you at home would be a sacrifice. I discovered it was a gift." "A gift how?" "The gift of having my father back. The gift of rediscovering that family is more important than any professional success. The gift of learning that true love requires presence, not just responsibility." Henry stood up and hugged his son. "And for me, it was the gift of discovering that I'm still important to someone, that I can still contribute something, that I can grow old with dignity, surrounded by love." Dorothy joined the hug. And for me, it was the gift of having a family again. Of being able to care for those I love and be cared for in return, Jennifer also approached. And for me it was the gift of rediscovering my father before it was too late. Of learning that physical distance doesn't have to mean emotional distance. When they separated from the group hug, everyone was emotional, but it was a good emotion, of gratitude and fulfillment. "You know something?" said Henry, looking at the gathered family. "What?" "Your mother would be very proud of you. She always said family is all that really matters in life." "And she was right," said Michael. "As always," added Jennifer. That evening, after Jennifer left for the hotel where she would stay until returning to Miami, and after Dorothy went to the room Michael had arranged for her upstairs, father and son were alone in the living room. "Michael," said Henry, "can I tell you a secret?" "Of course, Dad." "When I ran away from the medical center, I wasn't sure if I could make it to you. I was confused about addresses. I was afraid of getting lost in the streets. And how did you manage? I prayed to your mother to help me find my way home. And somehow, I found Dorothy at the right time, in the right place. Do you believe it was Mom? I don't know if it was her or if it was luck or if it was fate, but I know it was the most important thing that happened to me in recent years." Michael looked at his father with affection. "Dad, can I tell you a secret too?" "Of course." "When I came home and found Dorothy making a sign for silence, my first impulse was to get angry, but something made me stop and listen first." "And what do you think it was?" "I think it was Mom's voice reminding me that there's always more to the story than it seems at first. Your mother always said that. And she was right. As always." They sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes, each lost in their own reflections about how life had changed in recent months. "Dad," Michael finally said, "do you have any regrets about everything that happened?" Henry thought for a moment. "I only regret having taken so long to talk about my feelings, having tried to protect you from my sadness. And I regret having been so blind to your feelings, having thought that paying for expensive care was enough. But you know what? What? Maybe we needed to go through all that to get where we are. Maybe things happened at the right time." "How so?" "If you had taken me out of the medical center 6 months ago, maybe you wouldn't value what we have now so much. Sometimes we need to lose something to learn its true value." His father's wisdom impressed Michael. Even at 72, even with the first signs of cognitive decline, Henry was still capable of deep insights about life and human relationships. "Dad, what do you hope for in the coming years?" "I hope I can continue to be useful to the family. I hope I can see the grandchildren grow up. I hope I can die in peace, knowing that I was loved and that I loved back. And if you need more care in the future?" "If I need more care, I trust that you will make the best choices possible. But now I know that you will include me in those choices. You will consider my feelings, not just my medical condition." "Always, Dad, always." Henry stood up and walked to the window overlooking the backyard. The guava tree was illuminated by the streetlight. "You know this tree reminds me of you when you were a child." "Why?" "Because it took a long time to bear its first fruits. I thought it would never produce anything. But when it started to bear, it gave sweet and abundant fruit." "And how does that relate to me?" "You took a long time to show love in a way I could understand, but when you started to show it, it was abundant and sweet." His father's comparison moved Michael deeply. "And you? What do you represent in this comparison?" "I am the soil that supports the tree. Sometimes I may seem dry or tired, but I still have nutrients to offer to those I love." "Dad, it's true, Michael. I may be getting old. I may be losing some abilities, but I still have a lot of love to give, many pieces of advice to share, many stories to tell. And we want all of that. We want your presence, your advice, your stories, your love." Henry returned to the sofa and sat next to his son. "Michael, can I ask you one last thing?" "Of course, Dad." "Anything. If one day I become very ill, very dependent, don't let it become a burden that ruins the family's happiness. Promise." "Dad, taking care of those we love is never a burden." "I know, son. but promise me that if there comes a time when I can no longer contribute anything, you'll still remember that I contributed a lot throughout my life. Dad, you will always contribute, even if it's just with your presence, your love, your life story. Promise? I promise." Henry smiled and hugged his son one last time that night. "Then I'm at peace. I can grow old in peace, knowing that I am loved and valued." When they went up to sleep, Michael passed by Mrs. Dorothy's room to say goodnight. She was organizing Mr. Henry's clean clothes with the same care a mother organizes her child's clothes. "Mrs. Dorothy, can I thank you once again?" "For what, Mr. Michael?" "For saving my father, for saving our family." "Mr. Michael, the ones who saved whom were you who saved me. You gave me a family, a purpose, a reason to wake up happy every day." "Mrs. Dorothy, are you sure you want to change your whole life to take care of my father?" She stopped folding clothes and looked directly at Michael. "Mr. Michael, I didn't change my life to take care of your father. I found my true life by taking care of your father." Mrs. Dorothy's answer deeply touched Michael. She wasn't making sacrifices. She was fulfilling her life's purpose. "And if one day it gets too difficult? Then we face it together, as a family. But as long as I have strength and health, your father will have all the love and care he deserves." Michael went down to his father's room to say goodnight. Henry was in bed, reading a book he hadn't opened in months. "Managing to read, Dad?" "Yes, managing. I think the mind becomes clearer when the heart is at peace." "Is your heart at peace?" "It is, son. For the first time in a long while, my heart is completely at peace." Michael kissed his father's forehead, as he did when he was a child, and his father came to say goodnight. "Good night, Dad. I love you." "Good night, my son. I love you very much too." When Michael finally went to his own room, he reflected on how his life had changed in recent months. Not just because his father was living at home, but because he had rediscovered values he had lost in the race for professional success. He had rediscovered that meaningful relationships require time and presence. That love is shown through consistent actions, not just through big, sporadic gestures. That family is the most precious asset anyone can have. He had also rediscovered that taking care of those you love, far from being a burden, is one of the most rewarding experiences there is. That giving love and receiving love are inseparable parts of the same experience. And he had discovered in Mrs. Dorothy an extraordinary person whose capacity for selfless love had been fundamental to the transformation of the entire family. That night, Michael slept deeply, without the anxiety that had haunted him for years, without the guilt that gnawed at him every time he thought of his father, without the emotional void he tried to fill with excessive work. He slept with the peace of mind of someone who knows they are on the right path, who has discovered that true success is not measured in money or status, but in meaningful relationships and shared love. The next morning, he woke up to the smell of coffee and the sound of laughter coming from the kitchen. When he went down, he found his father and Mrs. Dorothy preparing breakfast together, chatting animatedly about the day's plans. "Good morning," said Michael, feeling a genuine joy he hadn't experienced in a long time. "Good morning, son. Did you sleep well?" "I slept great. And you?" "I slept like a baby," said Henry. "It's been years since I slept so well." "And I dreamed of my mother," said Mrs. Dorothy, setting the coffee on the table. "She told me she was proud of me." Michael sat at the table with the family that had been rebuilt through the love and determination of 3 people who refused to accept that meaningful relationships were impossible in the modern world. As they drank coffee together, planning the day ahead, Michael thought about the extraordinary journey they had taken over the past few months. It had all started with a desperate gesture of silence, a "shut up" whispered by a housekeeper who had chosen love over convenience. It had continued with a man rediscovering that his feelings mattered, that his voice deserved to be heard, that his love still had value. And it had culminated with a family gathered around a table, not out of obligation or convenience, but through a conscious choice to prioritize each other above all other demands of modern life. "Dad," said Michael, between sips of coffee, "can I ask you a question?" "Of course, son. If you could go back in time, would you do anything differently?" Henry thought for a few seconds, slowly chewing the bread that Dorothy had prepared. "Yes, I would," he said finally. "What?" "I would have talked to you about my feelings much sooner. I would have been more honest about what I was needing, instead of trying to protect you from my emotional needs. And I," said Michael, "would have paid more attention to the signs. I would have asked more about how you were feeling, not just about how you were being treated." "And I," said Dorothy, "would have called you on the first day instead of trying to solve everything by myself. But sometimes things need to happen the way they did for us to learn the lessons we needed to learn." Dorothy's practical wisdom always impressed Michael. She had a simple but profound way of understanding the complexities of life and human relationships. "Dorothy," he said, "can I ask a personal question?" "Of course, Mr. Michael." "Don't you miss your previous life, the freedom to come and go without responsibilities?" Dorothy smiled. "Mr. Michael, I thought I had freedom before, but I discovered that true freedom is being able to choose who to love and care for. Before I worked because I had to. Now I work because I want to, because I love. And that difference is important. It makes all the difference in the world. When we do something out of love, we don't get tired in the same way. When we do it out of obligation, everything becomes a burden." "And you, Dad? Don't you miss your independence?" "Son, independence without purpose isn't freedom. It's loneliness in disguise." Henry took another sip of coffee. "Here I have dependencies, yes, but I also have connections, and connections are much more important than independence." The reflections from his father and Dorothy made Michael think about his own relationship with independence and freedom. For years, he had pursued an independence that isolated him from the people he loved. He had mistaken loneliness for autonomy, distance for success. "And you too?" asked Henry. "Don't you feel like I'm limiting your lives?" "Dad," Michael said immediately, "you're enriching our lives, not limiting them." "How so?" "You're teaching us to live more meaningfully. You're showing us that relationships matter more than anything else. You're giving us the chance to repay all the love we received when we were children. And," Dorothy added, "you're giving me the chance to love and be loved as part of a real family." Henry became emotional. "You don't know how good it is to hear that. For a long time I thought I was being a burden to everyone." "Dad, you were never a burden. We just didn't know how to express how important you are to us." "And now we know," said Dorothy, "and we'll keep showing it every day." The phone rang, interrupting the moment of family connection. It was Jennifer, calling from Miami to wish everyone a good morning and see how they were all doing. "Hello, Jennifer," said Michael, putting her on speakerphone so everyone could join the conversation. "Good morning, family. How are you all?" "We're great," said Henry, his voice cheerful. "Having breakfast together, talking about life." "How wonderful. Daddy, how was your night?" "I had a very good night, my dear. Each day that passes, I feel more at home." "And you, Michael and Dorothy?" "We're fine," said Michael, "learning to be a family again." "And I'm living the best time of my life," said Dorothy, "taking care of those I love and being cared for in return." "Jennifer," said Henry, "when are you coming to visit us again?" "Daddy, I'm arranging everything to come next month. This time I'll stay for a whole week." "That's wonderful. We'll have time for lots of conversations." "And Daddy, I'm seriously thinking about moving to New York, to be closer to you all." "Really, my dear? Really? My work can be done from anywhere, and I want to be present in our family's life." Michael was surprised and moved by his sister's decision. "Jennifer, are you sure?" "I am, Michael. These past few months have made me realize that family is more important than any other plans I might have." "Jennifer," said Dorothy, "it's going to be wonderful to have you nearby. The house will be even fuller of love." "Thank you, Dorothy. Knowing that Daddy is being cared for by someone who truly loves him makes me feel very at ease." After they hung up, the family sat in silence for a few minutes, absorbing the news that Jennifer would be moving closer. "Dad," said Michael, "how do you feel knowing you'll have both your children nearby?" "I feel blessed, son. I feel like I'm living a miracle." "A miracle?" "The miracle of a family that found each other again, before it was too late." His father's words echoed in the kitchen with a depth that touched everyone. It really did seem like a miracle that they had managed to overcome years of emotional distance and rebuild such strong bonds. "Dorothy," said Henry, "you're going to like Jennifer. She has the same generous heart as you." "I already like her, Mr. Henry. Anyone who loves you as much as she does is already special to me." Michael watched the interaction between his father and Dorothy and realized how they had developed a truly filial relationship. It wasn't just caregiver and patient. It was a deep emotional connection based on mutual affection and respect. "Everyone," he said, "can I make a proposal for you all?" "Of course," said Henry. "How about if every Sunday morning was our sacred family time? Special breakfast, conversations, planning the week, quality time together?" "I would love that," Dorothy said immediately. "And me too," said Henry. "It's been years since I had something fixed to look forward to with joy every week." "Then it's settled. Every Sunday, family together, no exceptions. And when Jennifer moves here, will she join in too?" "Of course, Dad. The more loved ones around the table, the better." Dorothy got up to collect the empty cups, but Michael stopped her. "Dorothy, let me do the dishes today. You already made coffee for all of us." "No need, Mr. Michael. It's my job." "Dorothy," Henry said affectionately, "here in our home, family work is something everyone does a bit of. You're not our employee, you're our family." His father's words moved Dorothy deeply. She sat back down, letting Michael take care of the dishes while they continued talking. "Mr. Henry, can I tell you something?" "Of course, my dear." "Last night, before I went to sleep, I prayed, thanking God for having found you all. It had been a long time since I felt so complete." "Me too," said Henry. "I prayed, thanking God for having a family that loves me for who I am, not for what I can give or leave as an inheritance." "Dad," said Michael, stopping washing the dishes to look at his father, "you have always been loved for who you are. We just didn't know how to show it properly." "I know, son, but now I know in a way that I can feel, not just understand." The distinction his father made between knowing and feeling was profound. It wasn't enough for love to exist. It had to be communicated in a way that could be received and understood. "Dad, can you teach me something? What do you want to know?" "How can we be sure that we are showing love in a way that you can feel?" Henry thought carefully before answering. "Presence, Michael. Calm presence, without rush, without anxiety to do something else. Is that all? Genuine interest in what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling, in my memories and stories, and patience with my limitations. What else? Inclusion in decisions that affect me. You don't always have to accept my opinion, but you need to give me the opportunity to express it." Michael realized that all the items his father had listed were simple things that didn't cost money or require great sacrifices, just changes in attitude and priority. "And is there something that shows the opposite, that makes you feel unloved?" "Constant rush, impatience with my slowness, decisions made about my life without consulting me." Henry paused. "And obligatory visits, those where the person is counting the minutes to leave. I used to do that during visits to the medical center, didn't I?" "You did, son. But I understood. You had a life full of responsibilities." "But that doesn't justify it, Dad. Responsibilities can be organized. Love needs to be a priority." "And now it is," said Dorothy. "Now you have organized your life so that love is a priority." "True," said Henry, "and that makes all the difference in the world." When they finished breakfast and Michael finished washing the dishes, they sat on the porch to plan the day. "What would you like to do today?" asked Michael. "I would like to go to the market with you," said Henry. "It's been a while since I've chosen fruits and vegetables, since I've participated in the household shopping." "Great idea," said Dorothy. "You know better than I do the good brands, the best suppliers." "And after the market?" asked Michael. "We could stop by the house where you grew up," suggested Henry, "just for me to see how it is to reminisce." "Dad, but that house is no longer ours. There's another family living there." "I know, son. I just wanted to pass by, see the facade, remember the good times we lived there." Michael understood that for his father, That house represented a period when the family was united and happy. It was an emotional pilgrimage that could be therapeutic. Then let's go. First the market, then we'll stop by the old house. And in the afternoon? Asked Dorothy. In the afternoon we can organize the old photos, suggested Henry. I have several boxes of photos that I never organized properly. It would be good to sort them by time, put them in albums. I would love to help with that, said Dorothy. I really like seeing old photos, hearing the stories behind each moment. Me too, said Michael. It's been years since I've seen these photos. It will be like a trip back in time. Then it's decided, said Henry, with a satisfied smile. We have a full day of pleasant activities ahead. As they got ready to leave, Michael reflected on how different it was to plan a day focusing on what all the people involved would like to do, instead of simply fulfilling a schedule of obligations. At the market, Henry demonstrated surprising knowledge about product quality, fruit seasonality, and the best cuts of meat. Michael realized that his father still had a great deal of practical knowledge to share. Dad, how do you know so much about these things? Son, when your mother got sick, I had to learn how to shop, cook, and take care of the house. I learned a lot during that time. And at the medical center, you couldn't use that knowledge. At the medical center, everything was already prepared, chosen by other people. I didn't participate in any decisions, not even about what I was going to eat. Michael began to understand better why his father had felt useless at the medical center. It wasn't just the lack of affection. It was also the lack of autonomy and involvement in daily decisions. On the way to the old house, Henry fell silent, lost in memories. When they arrived in front of the house where Michael and Jennifer had grown up, his father asked to stay in the car for a few minutes, just observing. It's changed a lot, he finally said. How so, Dad? The fence is different, painted another color, and they removed the rose bush your mother planted in the front. Henry sighed. But it still looks like a happy home. How can you tell it looks happy? There are toys in the yard, clothes on the line, well-tended plants. These are signs that a family lives there, that there's life. Do you miss living here? I miss the time when we lived here, but I don't feel like coming back. The people who made this house special are no longer here. What do you mean? Your mother is gone. You grew up and made your own lives. The family that made this house a home no longer exists in the same way. And now? What makes a place home? Henry looked at Michael and then at Dorothy. Now it's you who make any place a home. Wherever you are with love, that will be my home. His father's answer moved Michael deeply. Home wasn't a physical place, but an emotional state created by the people who love each other. Can we go? Asked Henry. I've seen what I wanted to see. What was it? I wanted to make sure I wasn't idealizing the past. I wanted to see if it was really the house that was special, or if it was the family that was special. And what's the answer? It was the family, son. It was always the family. In the afternoon, on the porch of the house, they organized hundreds of old photos. Henry told stories behind each picture, reliving moments that Michael had forgotten. Look here, said his father, showing a photo of Michael at 10 years old. The day you planted the guava tree that's back there. I remember, said Michael. You said the tree would grow along with me. And it did. Both of you became strong and bore sweet fruit. Dorothy listened to each story with fascination, as if she were getting to know a family through a biographical film. Mr. Henry, may I ask a question? Of course, my dear. What was the happiest moment of your life? Henry thought for a long time, flipping through several photos. I think it was when Michael was born, holding my first child in my arms, knowing I had helped create a new life. And the second happiest moment? When Jennifer was born, seeing you two growing up, playing together, loving each other as siblings. And the third? Your marriage, knowing you had found people to love and that you were going to start your own families. Michael realized that all of his father's happiest moments were related to family, to his children, to deep human connections. And Dad, what was the saddest moment? When your mother passed away, not just because of losing her, but because I felt our family had come apart. What do you mean? Your mother was the center that kept us all together. Without her, each of us withdrew into our own grief, and we lost our connection with each other. But have we regained that connection now? Yes, son, in a different way, but we have. Dorothy, who had been quiet during this conversation, came closer with a photo she had found at the bottom of one of the boxes. Mr. Henry, who are these people? It was an old black and white photo of an elderly couple smiling. These are my parents, said Henry affectionately. Your grandparents, Michael. Dad, I barely remember them. You were very young when they passed away, but they left a very important lesson for our family. What? They always said that family is the only wealth we take from life. Everything else stays behind. And do you believe that? I completely believe it. Money stays, houses stay, cars stay. But the love we give and receive, that's the only treasure that really matters. Dorothy was moved. My mother used to say the same thing. She said that at the end of life we only take the memories of love with us. And your mother was right, said Henry. That's why it's so important to take good care of the people we love while they're with us. Michael looked at the hundreds of photos spread out on the porch table and realized he was seeing the history of a family through moments of joy, togetherness, and shared love. Dad, can I make a suggestion? Of course. Let's make a special album with these photos, but let's write the stories behind each one, so when the grandchildren grow up, they can get to know the family through these memories. What a wonderful idea, said Henry. It would be like leaving a legacy of stories for future generations. And I can help write, offered Dorothy. I have nice handwriting, and I'd love to be part of this project. Dorothy, said Henry, you can also include your own family stories. After all, you're part of our family now. Really? Of course. We want to know your story, learn about your family, understand how you became the wonderful person you are. Dorothy was touched. It would be an honor to be part of your family's history. They spent the rest of the afternoon organizing photos chronologically and starting to write the first stories. Henry dictated his memories. Dorothy wrote with careful penmanship, and Michael asked questions that helped his father remember forgotten details. You know, this is being therapeutic for me, said Henry at one point. How so, Dad? Remembering all these good moments helps me realize that I've had a rich life, full of love and joy. For a while I could only focus on the losses, on the loneliness. And now? Now I can see that losses are part of life, but they don't erase all the love we've lived. Dad, said Michael, do you think Mom would be happy to see us here organizing these memories? I'm sure she would, son. Your mother always wanted us to keep family traditions alive, to tell the stories to future generations. So we're honoring her memory. We are. And we're creating new memories to honor in the future. When the sun began to set, they had organized over 100 photos and written several stories. The project was just beginning, but it had already created a sense of shared purpose. Shall we continue tomorrow? Asked Dorothy. We'll continue every day until we finish, said Henry. This is a project worth doing. Dad, said Michael, this project gave me an idea. What? How about if we also started documenting our present, taking photos of our moments together now, writing about the good things that are happening? Why? So that in a few years, when we look back, we can remember how we rebuilt our family, so that the grandchildren know it's possible to overcome difficulties when you have love and determination. Henry smiled. I like the idea. Let's document our new family history. Dorothy got up to prepare dinner, but this time she was joined by Michael and Henry. The kitchen filled with conversation, laughter, and delicious aromas. You know, cooking as a family is one of life's greatest pleasures, said Henry, peeling potatoes. Why, Dad? Because it's a moment where everyone contributes something, everyone has a role, everyone feels useful. At the medical center, couldn't you cook? No. Everything came ready-made with no choice or participation. It was like being fed, not like feeding yourself. Michael understood once again how small details could make a big difference in a person's sense of dignity and autonomy. And at home, even peeling potatoes, do you feel useful? I feel part of something. I feel necessary for the final result to be good. Dad, said Michael, stopping chopping onions, can I confess something to you? Of course. I also feel more useful here, cooking with you all, than in many work meetings I attend. Why? Because here I'm contributing to something that really matters, the well-being of the people I love. Dorothy, who was seasoning the meat, smiled. And I feel more fulfilled cooking for people who will eat with pleasure than when I cooked without knowing if anyone would appreciate it. So we've all found purpose in this new family setup, said Henry. We have, said Michael. And we've also found a form of love that works for everyone. During dinner, they talked about plans for the future. Henry was interested in reading more books again, maybe taking an online course. Dorothy wanted to learn to use the computer better to help with the photo project. Michael was thinking about reducing his work hours even more to have more time with the family. Dad, said Michael, don't you think I'm exaggerating by cutting back so much on work? Son, success isn't just measured by what you achieve professionally. It's also measured by the quality of your relationships and your inner peace. How so? What's the use of having a lot of money if you don't have time for the people you love? What's the use of having a brilliant career if you come home empty and alone? But what about professional responsibility? Professional responsibility is important, yes, but it can't be the only responsibility in your life. You also have family responsibilities, emotional ones, to your own happiness. And how to balance it all? By setting clear priorities. What really matters to you? What do you want to be said about you when you're no longer here? Michael thought about his father's question. I want them to say I was a good son, a good brother, a person who knew how to love and care for those who mattered. Then you already know what your priorities should be. Dad, do you think there's still time for me to change, to become the person I want to be? Son, it's never too late to change when the change is for the better. Look at me. At 72, I'm still learning new things about love and family. How so? I'm learning that love isn't just feeling, but also expressing. I'm learning that family isn't just blood ties, but people who choose to care for each other. Henry looked at Dorothy. I'm learning that we're never too old to form new, meaningful bonds. And I, said Dorothy, am learning that we're never too young to find a new family, a new purpose, a new way to love. Michael was moved by his father's and Dorothy's reflections. And I'm learning that true success is being able to be present in the lives of the people I love. So we're all growing together, said Henry. After dinner, they sat in the living room for another evening of quiet conversations. Henry picked up a photo album from his wedding to Michael's mother and began telling stories from that time. Look here, he said, showing a honeymoon photo, the day we promised each other that our family would always be our priority. And did you keep that promise? Asked Dorothy. We did, while your mother was alive. After she passed, I kind of lost my way, and you all did too. But now we're back on track? Asked Michael. I think so, son. I think your mother would be proud to see our family together again. Dad, do you believe she sees us from somewhere? I don't know, Michael, but I know she lives on in our memories, in our values, in the way we try to love each other. And is that enough? For me, it is. Knowing her love continues to influence our lives, even after she's gone, gives me great peace. Michael looked around the room, seeing his father relaxed in his favorite armchair, Dorothy arranging some photos on the table, the house full of warmth. You know, I've never felt as much at peace as I do now, he said. Why, son? Because I finally understood what really matters, because I stopped chasing things that don't bring true happiness. And what brings true happiness? This right here, this room full of people who love each other, this house that became a home again, this feeling of belonging and purpose. Henry smiled. Son, it took you a while to figure that out, but you figured it out at the right time. How do you know it was the right time? Because if you had figured it out earlier, maybe you wouldn't have valued it as much. Sometimes we need to lose something to understand its true worth. And what did we lose? We lost time. We lost moments that won't come back, but we gained wisdom to make better use of the time we still have. Dorothy, who had been listening to the whole conversation in silence, approached. Can I say something? Of course, said Michael. You keep talking about lost time, but I think nothing was lost. Everything that happened was necessary to get you where you are now. How so? If you hadn't gone through that period of distance, maybe you wouldn't value being together so much now. If your father hadn't experienced the loneliness of the medical center, maybe he wouldn't know how to explain so well what's important to him. Do you think the suffering was necessary? I think the learning was necessary. The suffering was just the path that led to the learning. Dorothy's perspective was comforting and wise. Instead of lamenting the lost time, she suggested they focus on the knowledge gained and the rebuilt present. Dorothy is right, said Henry. If we hadn't gone through all that, maybe I'd still be pretending I was okay. You'd still be thinking financial responsibility was enough, and we never would have reached this true connection we have now. So it was all necessary? Asked Michael. Everything was part of the path that brought us here, said Dorothy. That night before bed, Michael went into his father's room for the nightly talk that had become a tradition. Dad, can I ask you something? Always, son. Are you afraid of dying? The question came out more direct than Michael intended, but he felt the need to understand his father's feelings about the finiteness of life. Henry thought carefully before answering. I'm afraid of dying alone, abandoned, without having had the chance to express all the love I have to give. And now I don't have that fear anymore. If my time comes, I'll leave knowing I loved and was loved, that I left a legacy of stories and values, that I made a difference in the lives of important people. Dad, Michael, death is part of life. What isn't part of it is living without loving or dying without having been loved. And do you feel loved now? I feel deeply loved. For you, for Dorothy, and I feel I still love very much too. What else do you want to experience before you go? I want to see Jennifer move here and our family become even closer. I want to finish the photo and stories project. I want to see you all happy and fulfilled. Just that? I want to make the most of every day I have left by being useful, being affectionate, being present in the lives of those I love. Dad, thank you for teaching me that loving is an active verb. How so? That loving isn't just about feeling but about acting, being present, caring, showing interest, making choices based on the well-being of those we love. And you've learned that very well, son. You're demonstrating love every day through your choices and actions. When Michael left his father's room, he found Dorothy in the hallway. Mr. Michael, may I speak with you for a moment? Of course, Dorothy. They went to the living room, where they spoke in low voices so as not to wake Henry. Mr. Michael, I wanted to thank you once again for everything you've done for me. Dorothy, I should be the one thanking you. You saved my father and our family. But you gave me a family, a purpose, a reason to wake up happy every day. And you gave us an example of selfless love that changed how we view relationships. Mr. Michael, may I make a confession? Of course. When I found your father on the street, lost, my first impulse was to call you. But something told me to talk to him first, to understand what was happening. And what made you change your mind? The way his eyes lit up when he saw me, the joy he showed at finding someone he knew, the way he held onto my hand like someone clinging to a lifeline. And then I understood that he wasn't geographically lost. He was emotionally lost. And I decided to help him find himself before telling anyone where he was. Dorothy, were you aware of the risk you were taking? I was. I knew I could lose my job, that I could have legal problems, that you could get angry with me. Then why did you do it? Because I looked into your father's eyes and saw the same desperation I saw in my mother's eyes when she felt abandoned in her illness, and I promised myself I would never let that go unnoticed again. Dorothy's explanation deeply moved Michael. She had risked everything out of compassion, empathy, love for her neighbor. Dorothy, you have no idea how your decision changed our lives. And you have no idea how you changed mine. I was living an empty life, just fulfilling obligations. Now I have a life full of meaning. And how do you see the future? I see a future where I'll grow old with you, caring and being cared for, loving and being loved. I can't imagine greater happiness. Dorothy, may I make you a promise? Of course. That no matter what happens, you'll always have a place in this family. You'll always be welcome, always be loved, always be cared for. Dorothy became emotional. Thank you, Mr. Michael. That's the greatest security someone can have in life, knowing they're loved and that they have a place in the world. And you do. Forever. That night, Michael fell asleep thinking about how Dorothy's impulsive decision had triggered a series of changes that completely transformed the lives of everyone involved. A gesture of compassion had saved a family from emotional disintegration. A "shut up" whispered with trembling hands had become the beginning of a story of love, care, and family rebuilding. The next morning, Michael woke up with a clear idea in his mind. He wanted to do something special to thank Dorothy for everything she had done for the family. During breakfast, while she and his father were animatedly discussing the lunch menu, Michael announced his idea. "Dorothy, I have a proposal for you." "What proposal, Mr. Moore?" "Michael, I want to formalize your position in our family." "What do you mean?" "I want you to sign a formal work contract with all employment rights, health insurance, vacation, year-end bonus. But most importantly, I want you to be officially recognized as the head caregiver of the family." Dorothy was surprised. "Mr. Michael, you don't need to do all this." "Yes, we do. You deserve security. You deserve recognition. You deserve to have guarantees for the future. And," added Henry, "you deserve to be treated as the important person you are to us." "But this will cost a lot of money." "Dorothy," said Michael, "money exists so we can take good care of the people we love. There's no more important investment than this." "And besides the employment rights," said Henry, "we want you to be officially considered a family member for all practical purposes." "What does that mean?" "It means you'll have a say in all important family decisions. It means if something happens to me or Michael, you'll have legal backing to continue taking care of Father. It means you're truly family, not just in our hearts." Dorothy began to cry. "You don't have to do this." "Dorothy," said Henry affectionately, "we're doing this because we want to, because you deserve it, because it's the right thing to do." "And," added Michael, "because we want you to feel secure and valued, just like you made us feel secure and valued." "Can I think about it?" "Of course you can. But know that the proposal isn't going away. We want to take care of you the same way you took care of us." During the day, while they continued the photo and story project, Dorothy was visibly moved. It was clear the proposal had deeply affected her. "Mr. Henry," she said at one point, "can I ask you a question?" "Of course, my dear." "Why do you want to do this for me?" "Because you've done much more for us than any money could ever pay for. You gave us a new chance to be a family. But I did it because I wanted to, because I love you. And we want to take care of you for the same reasons. Because we want to. Because we love you." "But I'm just an employee." "Dorothy," interrupted Michael, "stop saying that. You're not just anything. You're an extraordinary person who chose to love our family, and we choose to love you back." "It's hard for me to accept." "Why?" "Because I'm used to giving, not receiving. I'm used to taking care, not being taken care of." "Then it's time to learn," said Henry. "It's time to discover how good it feels to be loved and cared for, too." "Dorothy," said Michael, "have you decided whether you accept our proposal?" She took a deep breath, wiped her eyes, and looked at the two men who had become her family. "I accept," she said simply. "I accept with a heart full of gratitude." Henry stood up and hugged Dorothy like a father hugs a beloved daughter. "Welcome officially to the Patterson family." Michael also stood up to hug her. "Dorothy, thank you for accepting to be our family. Thank you for letting us take care of you too." "Thank you," she said through tears of joy, "for giving me a family when I thought I'd spend the rest of my life alone." End of story. Now tell us what you thought of this story and where you're watching from. If you have something to share with us, leave it in the comments with sincere words. Do you believe Michael made the right decision? We'd love to read your opinions. Thank you so much for joining us. Don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other emotional stories.